Hi, welcome back at CIO TV, CIO Day TV, and I'm talking here to Tina Nunno from the VP from Gartner, and you gave a wonderful presentation yesterday about the subject of my heart, Machiavelli in business, and if the CIOs are really into being a sheep, or are they being a wolf, or I think you said a rabbit or something like that.
Sometimes there are rabbits a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and you are from Yale, right? I mean, you're not from the technology sector.
I am not.
And so but you work for Gartner and you advise all the CIOs. How did you get through Yale and into this business?
It was a very strange path. I actually was initially hired by Gartner to do some government work with government clients because I had worked on Capitol Hill in the United States, which is a huge exercise in politics.
Wonderful leadership skills and getting things done and that kind of stuff, yeah.
Absolutely. You learn all kinds of ways to get different things done on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and to basically make sure that they don't happen. I mean, because that seems to be one of the core competencies of your government. It's amazing that government is still working.
I think recently that has become one of their core competencies, and I'm kind of hoping that core competency goes away. I think we're all hoping that core competency goes away.
Everybody in the whole world goes, well, it's me. We have Belgium, okay, as a little example, and they basically cannot agree, and we are having government because we have to cooperate together. There is nobody who has the majority, so they have to have a coalition. Mm-hmm. But in Belgium, they're not having a government for a year because they cannot agree.
They've agreed to disagree.
Well, there's no government, and you know what happens? Economic growth goes up. It's like really amazing. Anyway, so you worked at Capitol Hill, and then you worked and was selected by Gartner.
Yes.
But then you are now in leadership programs for the CIO office.
Yes,
and what can you learn between politics on Capitol Hill and the CIO?
A tremendous amount. I think a great deal of what CIOs have to do is to get people to work together, exactly as we've been talking about. Getting people to work together don't want to work together. A lot of CIO initiatives have to do with centralizing the organization, creating efficiencies, re-engineering business processes, all kinds of things which to most organizations feel a bit like a declaration of war, right?
Well, yeah, you're taking away my autonomy, and
Absolutely.
I don't have any trust that you will make something which is useful for me.
Absolutely, and so for a lot of organizations, that's the tough challenge that they have, is determining when do we work together, when do we not? When do we work together for the best of the company? Mm-hmm. When do we simply work together because it's efficient? And oftentimes the CIO ends up being in charge of that, because they'll say to the CIO, well, you make the efficiencies happen and we're not going to reorganize the rest of the organization, right? That becomes your problem. Yeah. So a lot of CIOs find that whether or not they want to be, they have to become master politicians.
Yeah, okay. And then what is my role? Am I more, as a CIO, the Dutch model, that we really are nice and everybody likes to talk to us and we talk until we come to an agreement, or is it more from the American bang? Or
it depends on the organization, right? So to me, it depends on two things. One, it depends on how urgent is the change. So in some organizations, they're in crisis. They've got competition out in the marketplace. The business models have changed. They've got some new, agile, young company that's come up. That's actually
never waste a good crisis.
Exactly.
So that's wonderful. You have to, as a CIO, if you don't have a crisis, invent one.
Well, that's one reasonable strategy, right? Because when there's a crisis, you can actually mandate. You can be tough. You can force people to do things when there's a crisis. Yeah. But lacking a good crisis, real or otherwise, you have to use other strategies. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, you have to use a softer approach or incent people or have just a very good reason as to why you want to change the way that things are. So I coach clients in different strategies that they can use in different environments, because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. Right? So Machiavelli, yesterday you talked about Machiavelli. When does Machiavelli come in?
Machiavelli always comes in.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I think he's always a good idea. Machiavelli is, as I know you know, having studied Machiavelli a great deal yourself, he's very misinterpreted. A lot of people only see the negative of Machiavelli, whereas I believe that Machiavelli coached leaders who have tough decisions to make.
To survive, yeah.
Well, absolutely, to survive and to do what's best for the organization. What I believe is that most leaders don't have choices between good and bad. Most leaders frequently only have a choice between bad and worse, right? And if you chose the bad and not the worse, you did a good job, right? And let's face it, a lot of decisions are like that. I have to centralize something. Who do I choose to make mad at me today, right? Whose turn is it in the organization to be unhappy, right? Yeah. Because it's unrealistic that we make everybody happy all at the same time. And actually what I frequently tell clients is, happy is not a legitimate business goal. Right? It's
No,
just not a
if you
legitimate
want to
goal.
if you want to make people happy, become a psychologist or do something else, but don't become a CIO. So you have
Absolutely.
to basically, you have to be self-confident and not just be hurt by all the angriness you have around you,
Absolutely.
and deal with that. And that's the kind of program you're trying to set up. That's really psychological, personal leadership skills. Huh?
It is. It's psychological leadership
Not something
skills.
I would expect from Gartner.
It's been a newer approach for Gartner. I would say that 10 years ago, Gartner
Yeah.
didn't focus on this at all.
No.
But what we found is the reality is this. More and more of our clients are CIOs. They are leaders. More and more, they have wonderful people who do the technology, who are technology experts because they can't possibly know it all. So the issues that CIOs deal with are leadership issues. They
Yeah.
have to deal with the CEO, the board of directors, the politics.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they find themselves in the middle of very high stakes conflicts where, for example, as many clients have told me, every interaction with the board of directors is an opportunity to get fired. Right? So I coach clients in what to do when they're in a conflict, and I give them certain rules of engagement. So, for example, one of the rules I always tell clients is don't bring data to a knife fight. If you're in a knife fight, data is not going to help you.
Okay, so that's a wonderful idea. Let me explain to you again. I mean, every time a politician says, I did a bad job explaining why this is the best, you know that they're already going, bad. And then CIOs do that too. They want to come up with more graphs
They do.
and more data. And in a knife fight, yeah.
They do.
Bring a gun, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
in a
you-
knife fight, bring a gun.
You periodically, it's true. You have to sometimes bring a very different weapon to a knife fight.
Yeah.
And CIOs are really wonderful people, right? They tend to be extraordinarily intelligent. They are great with data, but sometimes they bring data to the wrong occasion.
That's true. And now there's there's now a tendency to bring people from the business as CIOs.
Yes.
I think a quarter now comes from the business and runs ICT. Are they better equipped to this normally because they have been in other parts of the business? Are they more Machiavelli equipped compared to the normal CIOs who come from the technical side?
In general, they are. It's kind of interesting, but in general, people who come to this with an MBA or a broader-based background, oftentimes are a little bit more naturally inclined towards being Machiavellian. They're
Yeah.
more likely to actually be familiar with Machiavelli's work
Yeah.
than a CIO who came up through a technology background. Because
Yeah.
let's face it, if you've got a computer science degree, you probably didn't have as part of your curriculum
Yeah.
Machiavelli or any other type
Well,
of...
it's not talking to other people is not in your curriculum.
No, generally not. I mean,
No.
the complexity of technology is hard enough
Yeah.
without also having the competency of dealing with people.
Yeah,
right?
but they need to do it. So that is so. If we yesterday I talked to a CIO. I'm going to interview him, Aloy from DSM, and I said to him, he's been selected CIO of the year twice. Okay,
Phenomenal.
so he's good in
Yeah.
his job. And I go like, and he's now accepted a new job. And I go like, and again a CIO job. And I go like, wasn't it a good idea to go to a different side? Run marketing or sales or production or do something else. Is it something you would advise to clients as part of their curriculum? Get out of ICT. If you want to become big in ICT, go outside and run something different for a couple of years.
I think it's a great strategy. One of the reasons why it works so well for CIOs is it changes the view of them as being predominantly back office to actually a view of them actually being business people. Now,
Yeah.
I believe that technology people are simply business people who happen to specialize in technology. I never think of the business and IT as separate. Sometimes IT executives, however, do think of it as separate, right? They'll actually call the rest of the organization the customers,
Yeah.
which I disagree with.
Yeah, they are a service provider and they will provide whatever you want. And
Exactly.
they will make it.
And in this day
And
and
if you
age,
want something stupid, I will provide it for
Right.
you. Yeah.
right. And oftentimes the reality is the CIO has to protect people from themselves. They have to protect the rest of the business from themselves. So quite frankly, as you said, if the head of marketing asks me for something stupid,
Yeah.
in order to protect both the head of marketing and the business, I should challenge them on that. Right? I should challenge them actually very aggressively on that, or very diplomatically. Use whatever tool you have at your disposal. But part of the
And both are
responsibility.
Machiavelli.
Absolutely.
Protect somebody against himself in a nice way or a brutal way is both Machiavelli
Completely.
applied.
Completely. In
Yeah.
my book, I talk about.
You have a book.
I do, in fact.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
We
so
haven't
glad
talked
to-
about your book. Where's
We
your
haven't
book?
talked
Do
about
you
the
have
book.
it with you?
I do not have it with me, but
Ah.
it is available on Amazon.com, so
Okay.
people can
And
easily
what's the
find
name?
it. The name of my book is The Wolf in CIO's Clothing.
The Wolf in CIO's Clothing. Okay, that sounds Machiavelli.
It is. It's my interpretation
Yeah.
of how IT people should use Machiavelli. And I talk about the reality that sometimes you have to use the dark side to protect the organization and to build your strength in the organization. So it means at times you want to embrace the reality of power, right? The ability to make things happen. And when power doesn't work, you may want to embrace manipulation, which is always a controversial idea. But I truly believe that manipulation is oftentimes appropriate when you're dealing with people who are more powerful than you are, or might actually even be a little irrational, which happens at times, because when you're dealing with irrational people, power doesn't work. So I actually...
Can I see it? This is, can I have the camera? Can you zoom into this? This is there, the wolf in CIO clothing. Okay, I immediately got it because and you also interview CIOs, right? I mean, where they basically describe what kind of problems they have and what pain they are in.
Absolutely. The book is actually full of many CIO interviews. For reasons that are probably obvious, all of the interviews are anonymous, right? So as I like to say...
Nobody wanted to come out?
You know, it's anonymous to protect both the innocent and the guilty, right? Because as you might imagine, these tactics usually only work if no one knows you're using them. Right, so many CIOs were actually quite generous in sharing their positive experiences as well as their painful experiences, because many CIOs have learned to use some of these very dangerous tactics the hard way.
Tina, thank you very much. Great book. I'm going to read it, and I think it's going to be. I mean, it's going to combine my love for politics and my love for technology. So I think it's the right book for me and for you too. If you're into technology, learn how to basically protect yourself from the rest of the organization and find the right role. And the wolf in CIO clothing is highly recommended. Tina, thank you very much for coming. This was CIO Day TV, made possible by Cynthia and by Verizon. And we'll be back in a minute. Stay tuned.